Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. So, Derek and I haven't talked about it recently because it's been a little bit quiet, but MiSTer FPGA has another arcade core in active development, and it is one that I have been talking about for years now, being my number one pick as far as arcade cores coming across the MiSTer FPGA side of things. Because we have some absolutely incredible cores on MiSTer FPGA, both on the handheld PC console as well as arcade side of things, but there are a bunch of cores in development, and they kind of all started around the same time. That's why you haven't seen many MiSTer videos recently, but I'm sure in the back half of the year you're going to see a deluge. But right now, Wickerwaka, who developed some of the other cores on the MiSTer FPGA on the arcade side of things, is starting work on an IGS PGM core. And if the PGM does not sound familiar, I will leave a link in the description below to my PGM playlist. It is absolutely one of my favorite arcade boards of all time. Basically, it's the Neo Geo with more power in a lot of ways, and honestly, it has a metric crap ton of hidden gems. Something like Demon Front is absolutely amazing. So many good cave shmups, beat 'em ups, and fighting games. I feel like 9 out of 10 of you have never played any of these games before, and if the core was on MiSTer FPGA, it would absolutely be an outstanding time, because we're talking about a core that would bring like 30 plus games into the mix, including some that are like mahjong and puzzle matching games that you probably don't care about all that much. But the games on the PGM that you would want to play number in the dozens, and trust me, it absolutely would be a fun time. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But just realize this is at the very start of its development, but in a lot of ways it can actually borrow code from some of Wickerwaka's other cores, because this already has instances on MiSTer FPGA where some of the silicon is actually working in other cores. That is the thing, there was so much hardware shared back in the day, you can kind of go back and forth and use these things. And it's not like Wickerwaka doesn't have an amazing reputation when it comes to developing FPGA cores on MiSTer. He gave us the Irem M92, and honestly, kind of has the same vibes of a Neo Geo or a PGM as well. And it also has a metric crap ton of bangers when it comes to the actual arcade side of things. You absolutely love to see that. Now, if you aren't familiar with the IGS PGM, it is another arcade board from the 90s made by a company called IGS in Taiwan, and they're basically trying to go head-to-head with people like SNK and the Neo Geo MVS in arcades by being a little bit cheaper and a little bit more powerful. And even though the PGM didn't get anywhere near as much acclaim as the actual Neo Geo did, and the games are definitely a lot cheaper to buy today than the Neo Geo equivalents, this is still an absolutely outstanding arcade board, and it would be an amazing core to have on the MiSTer FPGA side of things. Now, I'm sure Wickerwaka can get it done, but we have to be honest, he also made us play Dino Rex on the MiSTer FPGA, so his reputation makes it best. All jokes aside, Dino Rex is an absolute vibe of a game, and this is the Taito F2 core who Wickerwaka also developed for, and that really is the fun thing. There are still a bunch of arcade platforms that could come to MiSTer FPGA that would give you so many amazing games to play, and that's exactly what we want, because at this point in time, basically every single mainline console and handheld that can run on MiSTer is there, so now we're going to the arcade side. And if you aren't familiar, this is one of the IGS PGM games, but this is technically a conversion. That is because the PGM came in two formats, cartridge-based just like the MVS, as well as single board with a JAMA Edge. And those JAMA Edge games are mostly the cave games using IGS hardware, but there actually is a version of Demon Front from Korea that also comes on a JAMA Edge, and I actually have that board in my collection, so if you want to see a specific video on that, leave me a comment down below. But just again, think of this as something like the Neo Geo, except with complete different developers behind the whole thing. And I'm not saying it's quote-unquote as good as Neo Geo in all of the games department, but trust me, there is a ton of them that are absolutely 10 out of 10s. And I know a lot of people are waiting for stuff like the actual Capcom CPS-3 from Hotego or other developers, and that is definitely exciting, but of these two boards, the CPS-3 gives you basically just a handful of games, where the PGM gives you dozens upon dozens of arcade classics, most of which I'm assuming you've never played before. But if you have played any sort of PGM games, leave me a comment down below and you tell me which ones you enjoyed, because I would be really curious to hear. Because I absolutely love collecting for the PGM. I've got a bunch of games in my collection, and I would love to play them on MiSTer FPGA on my PVM as well as my OLED TV. But here's a soundtrack sample to get an idea of what it sounds like, 45 seconds, and I'll be right back with more news. So if you've never played Demon Front before, take it from me, don't wait for an FPGA core to exist. You can play it on Final Burn Neo, you can play it on MAME. The only wrong way to play Demon Front is not play it in any way, shape, or form. And if you are a fan of bullet hell shmups, this board is absolutely lousy with cave games, and it's one of those things I have each and every one of them in my collection because I absolutely love playing them. But again, I would love to play them on MiSTer FPGA because I totally get not everyone is going to run out and grab a PGM motherboard and cartridge for these things. But if you do want to actually grab one, PGM motherboards are basically a dime a dozen, kind of the same way that MVS single slots are, and they really are fun things to actually collect, put on your shelf, and kind of play around with. Although I will say if a core exists, I hope that there is a rotate mode in the actual options menu, which always almost happens, because trying to actually turn my 20-inch PVM on its side absolutely is just a back strainer when it comes to playing these games. So more often than not, I'll actually play my PGM on my OLED with my RetroTink 4K and using rotate mode there. That way I don't have to actually break my back out trying to do these things. And it's fun hardware to collect, but having an FPGA implementation would be incredible because even though software emulation is completely buttoned up, it is always great to have options when it comes to these games, and I can't wait to see them potentially running on MiSTer FPGA. Because even though the DE10 Nano board is definitely long in the tooth, it still has a lot of life left in it, especially on the arcade side of things. Because even if the MiSTer project goes to another board in the future, we're talking potentially maybe Dreamcast on the actual console side of things, and maybe Nintendo DS on the handheld, but there's not like it's going to have a PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, or GameCube core anytime soon. So this is really where the focus for MiSTer can and should be in the future, at least in my opinion, getting a ton of these arcade boards working, especially the multi-boards, because one core brings you a metric crap ton of games. Although interestingly, there is different ICs on some of the cartridges for protection, so making this core actually requires having some custom silicon for certain games, because IGS definitely wanted to protect these games back in the day because ROM burning was basically prevalent just like it was on the MVS, so it does have a little bit of an extra component in there that you have to figure out, but I'm sure Wickerwaka is up for the task. And trust me, it definitely is a task because even though this does have a Motorola 68000 on board as well as a Zilog Z80, chips that have been incorporated into different MiSTer FPGA cores, IGS made custom silicon on the actual video side of things, so it's not like this is a basically free core. It's going to take a lot of work. We might not see anything game-wise running for a month, a year, we really don't know, so just always remember, like I like to say, don't expect anything anytime soon, and if it somehow ends up working soon, just be pleasantly surprised, because I love the PGM. I have basically the ability to play all the games for it, but I would love to just be able to turn on my MiSTer FPGA, go into the arcade cores menu, and pick whatever game I want. Because trust me, if you've never explored the library before, you're missing out on one of the best arcade boards that for some strange reason most people don't know about. This thing should be as popular as the Neo Geo MVS or AES, but it just basically has like 10% of the audience. That absolutely bums me out. But that really is the great thing about something like MiSTer FPGA. Suddenly when people see a new core, they want to play around with it, they want to check the games out, and you have a ton of people talking about all of the amazing things, like Oriental Legend 2 here, absolutely a straight up 9 out of 10, beat 'em up with some amazing sprite work, graphics, and music. That's really the thing. The developers at IGS made a lot of the games for the board, and they absolutely were incredible developers when it came to actually making fun games for the hardware. And of course you throw Cave and a few other developers into the mix, and you have a recipe for a fun time. And if you're not aware, the IGS PGM actually got a PGM 2 and 3. 2 basically had different chips on every cartridge, making it whatever the hell they felt like, and 3 is just basically a lightweight PC in a box. But the original PGM, with all of its classic hardware on board, is just one of the most fun times you can have when it comes to playing arcade games. And the fact that Wickerwaka is taking this challenge up is 10 out of 10 great. Because it's one of those things, there's still a lot left on the table when it comes to MiSTer FPGA. You could do something like PGM, you could do something like the Taito F2. There's still a lot of boards out there that will work on MiSTer, and hopefully one day we see them all. You can leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you could snap your fingers and make one core appear on the MiSTer FPGA, which one would it be? At least on the arcade side of things. For me, this is exactly that. I want to play PGM on my MiSTer, even if I can play it by taking my arcade boards out of the closet. But that's the MiSTer FPGA news as far as today is concerned. This is why retro gaming is making a comeback. I absolutely love it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, but otherwise we're done. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.